мною принято решение о проведении специальной военной операции.
Today at 1, we're live in Ukraine as Russia invades in a major military assault by land, sea and air.
It's now more than a month since the US Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, visited Taiwan. China's ambassador to Australia also issued a blunt warning a few days ago that those who push for Taiwanese independence will be punished.
We're waiting for a peaceful reunification, but we cannot rule out other options.
You won't have to do it anymore. 4 more years, you know what? It'll be fixed, it'll be fine. You won't have to vote anymore.
Welcome to Why We Fight. Democracy is at war. Around the globe, we're watching the forces of authoritarianism rise. From regimes like Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea to oligarchs, religious extremists, and populist demagogues. There are those who resist. Activists, journalists, academics, soldiers, faith leaders, and politicians. In this series, you'll meet them. You'll hear their stories, what they do, what democracy and freedom mean to them, and why it's worth fighting for. If you believe in this mission, don't forget to like and subscribe. Patreon and Substack supporters get early access and exclusive extras. And if you want to connect with others who care about democracy and a free, living world, join us on Discord. For my written work and commentary, check out my Substack, Dictators v Democrats. With that said, let's go. Welcome to this episode of Why We Fight. Today I have the honor and the pleasure of speaking with Mr. Taha Siddiqui, an investigative journalist from Pakistan who is now forced to live in exile in Paris. Mr. Siddiqui, welcome onto the program. For anybody in my audience who doesn't know from that brief introduction, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, hello. Thank you for having me. I'm a Pakistani journalist in exile, living in Paris since the last 7 years. I moved to Paris after surviving an attack on my life in 2018, which was carried out by people that I believe were from the Pakistan military, who had been threatening me. The Pakistan military itself had been threatening me for a number of years for my reporting into investigations into the Pakistan military abuse in the country, with regards to their human rights abuses, with regards to their involvement in politics, with their connections to Islamist militants, with their businesses, etc. In fact, in Pakistan, the Pakistan military has an overarching presence everywhere, and I was investigating that, reporting on that without any censorship, and I became a target.
And under such conditions, as you've clearly stated, journalism is going to be a dangerous profession. Why put your head above the parapet in such a manner?
Well, for me, journalism is a profession that is very much needed in every society. Whenever I would be threatened or intimidated or told to be careful in Pakistan, my only response or standard response was that I'm just doing my job. And for me, doing my job as honestly as possible was what I wanted to do. And especially because I think journalists have a big responsibility to report facts and to report things as they are, so as to inform people better, to inform the society better, so that they could make good decisions and could, so that they could, and with those decisions that the people would make, the whole society or democracy becomes better. So I think that if you are into journalism, you are supposed to do your job honestly. You are supposed to do your job as factually as possible. That's the responsibility of a journalist. And so I was just doing my job. And I think when people question journalists about why risk your life, I think we should be questioning more the people who put our lives at risk because they're the ones who are responsible for creating this sort of dangerous sort of intimidating environment, and they should be held accountable instead of journalists being told that you are putting yourself at risk.
Those creating this environment, why do you think they fear journalism so much to go so far as to murder journalists and attempt to kidnap journalists, as you were subject to?
Well, yeah, in my case, just to give you a bit of a background, I survived what is called an enforced disappearance in Pakistan. When you speak up or do not censor yourself or go against what the state narrative is or what the state wants you to sort of like repeat or disseminate or do propaganda for the state, and if you do not do that, you can become a target, and they make you go missing. And thousands of people in Pakistan are missing today. I think the reason why it's they do not want this sort of independent reporting or freedom of expression or freedom of press is because it will expose them. It will expose their brutalities. It will expose their abuses, and if they are exposed, they risk losing the power they have, the control they have, the money that they have. And for a journalist, or for me particularly as an investigative journalist in Pakistan, I was exposing the Pakistani militaries abuses and excesses, and they do not want that, because that way people will get to know more. And if people get to know more, people will start questioning them. And if people start questioning them, they will not have the same hold over Pakistan. Right now, I mean, we say that Pakistan is being held hostage to the Pakistan military, which runs the country like its own private empire.
On the subject of Pakistan's military controlling not just politics, but I think it came up briefly, national identity and faith. How has it weaponized identity and faith to undermine democracy, to undermine free speech, and how should journalists, activists, dissidents respond?
Well, I mean, the thing is, Pakistan has sort of, since 1947, when the partition happened between India and Pakistan, some 80 years ago, the Pakistan military very early on started to sort of dominate the country's politics, and actually took over in a military coup a few years after Pakistan's independence, or partition, as I call it, from India, when the British colonizers left. And basically, since then, the Pakistan military has been in the driving seat of Pakistan, and they have sort of used this position of power to create a sense of identity, which is which is very close to an identity of being Muslim. And the idea is basically, I mean, the Pakistani military sells or sort of like it creates this narrative that Pakistan has been made independent on the basis of Islam, and we are Muslims, and we are all the same. And it has, in my opinion, failed to create this national sense of identity, but it still pushes that. And this identity of being Muslims is being pushed on different ethnicities that live in Pakistan. We have, multiple ethnicities. We have more than 20 different ethnic groups that are part of Pakistan today, and many of those do not want to be part of Pakistan. Many of them have their own identities, but they are forced by the Pakistani state, which is run by the Pakistan military, to have this false sense of identity of Islam. And then what they do, also not just weaponize this in this way, but weaponize it in other ways, where they say that, because you're Muslim, because Pakistan was born out of Islam, we have to. This is like this is a thing that we say, that the expression is that Pakistan is the castle of Islam, and we need to protect it. And we need to protect it because there are other evils out there which are supposed to be, threatening our existence and threatening our identity as Muslims. And so they brainwash people through schools, through the media, through the political class, to believe in this sort of narrow sense of identity, a very narrow sense of identity, which creates this sort of paranoia amongst the people. People become more conservative, people become more radical, and then they use these very people for their own objectives in, conflicts also. I mean, these radicalized Muslims that Pakistani state produces then go on to, fight holy wars, so-called holy wars in the name of Islam in Kashmir, in conflict zones like Kashmir, in the Indian side of the Kashmir, or in Afghanistan. We've seen that, the jihadis that came, or the Taliban that came in Afghanistan, many of them were trained in Pakistan. So there are multiple reasons how, or multiple ways how Pakistani state, and primarily by Pakistani state, I mean the Pakistan military, uses Islam and faith and identity as a weapon against its own people.
And how much does it also manipulate the fear of the other? It's something that we see in authoritarian or hybrid authoritarian regimes often, is things like foreign agents laws and the painting of any dissent as inevitably controlled by shadowy foreign organizations, the CIA, MI6, Mossad, etc.
Definitely. I mean, this is one thing that we keep hearing, and I keep getting this also, is that, when I was in Pakistan, when I was a reporter reporting freely, whenever I would do a free report that was, without any censorship, I still remember once I did this report, and I was called in by the military general, who was the media spokesperson at that time. And he said that, my reporting is being used by the CIA, by Mossad, and by Indian intelligence agencies to sort of, create problems in Pakistan, or to create divisions in Pakistan. And I would be told that, I'm Indian sponsored, I'm Israeli sponsored, or I'm American sponsored. And so there is always this idea that if you are not following, or if you're not towing the line that the Pakistani state is giving you, or wants you to toe, then you are a foreign agent and you are a traitor. And several of our friends have been, accused. Several journalists I know, several activists I know, have been accused of it. In fact, one of a very good, activist, human rights activist in Pakistan, named Idris Khatak, who I would like to mention in this podcast. He's in jail, and he had a military trial, even though civilians are not supposed to have a military trial. He had a military trial. The person worked for Amnesty International. He worked for different international humanitarian organizations, and the military trial that punished him for, I think, around 10 years or 12 years in jail very recently, said that he was involved in anti-state activities with foreign agents. And this is a complete lie. The military trial was not transparent. He did not get access to a fair trial. He did not get access to a lawyer or a legal team, which of his own choosing. So in Pakistan, this sort of this otherization is weaponized also. And as soon as if you disagree with the Pakistani state narrative, or if you disagree with the Pakistani state, information, or whatever they want to push into forward, you are termed a traitor, and you're termed anti-state.
And as a journalist, in your experience, what do journalists have to do to survive and have a career under such conditions?
It's in Pakistan, it's not like as if journalists do not exist. We do have journalists and they are reporting. A lot of my colleagues are still back home who are reporting from the ground. But, more and more they are exercising self-censorship. So journalism has been now limited to he said, she said, they said kind of reporting, where people do not investigate, people do not cross the red lines. And the sad part is, or the difficult part is that we do not even know what the red lines are anymore, because anything can be a red line. Journalists are so afraid of crossing these invisible red lines that we're not sure of, that everybody exercises self-censorship. In a recent survey that that was conducted in Pakistan amongst journalists, around, I think, 90% of journalists said they say self-censorship, they exercise self-censorship, and so that's a huge number, and that's how journalists survive. And in Pakistan, I mean, in the last over the last 30 years, if you look at the numbers, more than 100 journalists have been killed. And I'm just talking about the killings. The attacks are, if you talk about the attacks, those are in much, much larger figures. So over 100 journalists being killed, and none of those 100 murders, more than 100 murders, have been investigated properly. Nobody has been ever punished. And so, this is an environment and where there's extreme fear. And Pakistan has been termed as one of the most dangerous countries for journalists. And in recent years, because of all this fear and intimidation and control, what we now say is that it's not the journalists who are being killed anymore. If you look at the figures, I mean, in the last few years, the figures have gone down because now they have effectively killed journalism itself. So journalism is dead now in Pakistan.
How can it be revived?
I think, I mean, of course, if these, intimidation tactics by the Pakistani state, and then, using laws which are coercive laws, which control the media. There are several laws like that in Pakistan. Then, like, for example, there's also the blasphemy law, which sometimes is applied to journalists to intimidate them or to silence them. I think, first of all, we need to address the legal, problems and the legal issues that restrict and or sort of constrain journalists from speaking the truth or speaking independently or without censorship. That's the first part. The second part is also this, I think the Pakistani state should realize that if there is independent, strong journalism in the country, it's only going to benefit the country itself. If we do not self-criticize ourselves, if we do not introspect, which is the job of the media, if we do not have these kind of checks and balances, how do we suppose that the country improves, on human rights standards, on how do we improve the lives of common people? And I think a big part of that has to do with having an independent, strong, and clear, like a media ecosystem that does not fear from reporting truthfully.
Do you consider journalism and speaking truth to power to be a form of patriotism?
I'm not very keen on this idea of patriotism myself to begin with, because I think patriotism is something which is induced into humans or into citizens in a country by the state through propaganda, through control. And I mean, why should one be patriot to one country or not to the other just because they're born there, which they had nothing to do with? I mean, I was born in Pakistan, but I had nothing to do with being born in Pakistan. It was not, my choice, or it was completely random where everyone is born. So I think patriotism is something which is a learned or induced sort of like, feeling that states do because they feel that if we do not induce that, if we do not inculcate that in the population, the countries will feel insecure, and they will feel that maybe there will not be the kind of unity that they want. Well, but all of that said, I think journalism for me, or speaking truth to power, is something that I would look at it from a societal perspective. How do we improve the society we live in? How do we improve the society we inhabit? How do we improve the society that we want to be part of? And I think journalism plays a big part, and speaking truth to power plays a big part in improving the society that we live in.
And in your view, with Pakistan being in the state that it's in at the moment, with the military having such control, is it possible to meaningfully reform the system from within, or is it going to have to be a hybrid approach of activism and dissent from within, and a diaspora community putting pressure on from exile?
I think with oppressive regimes, it's always a combination of the both, in the sense that, there are people who are fighting on ground in Pakistan who are, within the system, living within the system. They have their limitations. They cannot speak as freely as someone abroad. And so we have those, those of our activist friends and journalist friends who are in the country and are trying to push, the change from within, but that's a very, very slow and long and difficult journey. On the other hand, I think we're seeing that a lot from Pakistan or other oppressive regimes, and we recently also, as Reporters Without Borders, an organization which is a media watchdog, talked about this also in a recent talk that I was at. That 70 to 80% of their emergency funds are being dedicated to exiled journalists now. So there's a trend that we're seeing globally, that a lot of media is going into exile for safety reasons, because it's not safe anymore to report and live in the same country. So I think it's a combination of both, that one needs to have, our connections or our, activists on ground, but then there is also a big push that comes from the diaspora or from abroad. But at the same, but having said all of that, I should also mention that being in exile doesn't mean complete safety. Since I've been in exile for the last 7 years, I've been warned. When I arrived here in the beginning in exile, I was warned by the French authorities about, my name being on a kill list, and being careful in Paris also, and then I know other Pakistani dissidents in exile also going through similar sort of warnings that the Pakistani state could try to attack them even in exile. We have had two Pakistani persons in exile who were found dead in mysterious circumstances a couple of years ago. One was in Sweden, called his name was Sajid Hussain, who was a journalist, and he was found dead in Sweden in 2020. And then there was another one in Canada, Karima Baloch, who was also found dead in very mysterious circumstances. And both of these deaths, we suspect the military was behind them, the Pakistani state was behind them. So there's a lot of this sort of, pursuing dissidents even abroad, that we're seeing that Pakistan is practicing, and other countries also we know that. And this sort of what it's called is transnational repression. And now we're even in exile. We're not absolutely safe, and we have to definitely be cautious. But of course, it's not the same as living in the country. When I was living in when I was living in Pakistan, it was the Pakistani state directly that was threatening me. The Pakistani state directly that wanted to kill me. But in exile, at least the state that I'm living in, the French state, is trying to protect me. It has given me a protection status as a refugee. So it's a little bit different, but the threats still remain.
Well, given the status that the French state has given you, in your experience speaking to other dissidents, are host nations doing enough to protect pro-democracy or pro-human rights dissidents that live there?
It totally depends on the kind of relationship the state has, the host state has with the state, the origin country of the dissident. For example, in the case of France, I do know that Pakistan and France do not have that sort of a close relationship, so I do not see any kind of threat from that perspective. The thing is that today European states, or the Western states, as we group them together, where most refugees are trying to come, or people are taking refuge in exile. Most people head to these countries. The European states and the Western states, including the United States, they're all basing their relationship with oppressive regimes on the basis of not human rights values, but on the basis of strategic interests. Most of the time, these interests are money related or business related. And so, in that sense, we've seen that, for example, China, which has been pursuing its dissidents abroad, has not been, reprimanded or being questioned in the same way that we might see Russia being questioned, because China has a lot of business interests in the West. Similarly, Saudi Arabia, for example, doesn't get the same kind of pressures when it pursues its dissidents abroad, when it tries to threaten its people in exile abroad, compared to what Iran would go through, or the Iranian regime or Iranian government or state would be questioned, when their dissidents are threatened in exile. So it definitely, we are seeing that there is a difference of treatment depending on which country you come from, and which is quite, I would say, shameful, because the Western bloc, or the Western countries, they claim that human rights values are their most principled, or sort of the values that they hold most dear, and yet we see on and on that those values are compromised in exchange for business interests, in exchange for strategic interests, and this is an alarming situation that where people in exile like me are facing.
For Westerners or those living in stable democracies who want to assist dissent and assist dissenters, and assist the growth of democracy around the world, what advice would you have to offer? And what role does history have to play in how they approach people and how they approach the situation? I'm asking specifically about the history of imperialism.
Well, I mean, to begin with, I think um, Western democracies, or democracies which are stable and are welcoming refugees, and I mean, welcoming is a big word here, because we're seeing this anti-migration or anti-migrant sort of sentiment. I think the first thing we need to do is, or the public needs to do, is that they need to vote better people in power. They need to bring in people who have values which are pluralistic, values which are, humanist, values which align with the universal human rights values. And I think we're seeing that's in the West, the democracies are failing to do that. The power structures that are, being created in the West nowadays are very much, power structures which are aligned with policies or values which are, conservative values, far right politics, which are anti-migrant, which are very much, inward looking rather than outward looking. and are not very welcoming to pluralistic ideas. And I think that's the first thing that needs to be done, is that that these stable democracies need to remember that they came here after a lot of struggle. Democracies were not achieved overnight. There was a lot of struggle in the West to understand what human rights are, to understand what freedom of expression is, and do not take these values for granted, like as if you just have always had them. The West has had to, or globally, every place that every country that has these values, they've had to fight for them. It's been a long journey, and today they have to continue fighting. It's not over. The battle for these values. It's not like as if we achieved them and then now we're okay and relaxed and we should just, forget about fighting with them. I think the fight continues. And that's what the Western democracies need to remember, and people in Western democracies need to remember. As far as the history of imperialism is concerned, I think that's something also that needs to be brought into this whole debate, as to why we see this sort of imbalance globally. Why do we see, oppressive regimes like Pakistan or like Saudi Arabia? I mean, most of these oppressive regimes are post-colonial post-colonial messes. Like, it's a post-colonial mess. Pakistan is a post-colonial mess. What's happening in the Middle East is a post-colonial mess. The thing is that, when the Western, or when Europe was colonizing the world and looting the world during those 200-300 years, it sort of stunted the growth or development of these regions, and it stunted the evolution of pluralistic and humanistic values in these places, because these are all colonized places. And once they left, it's not been so long, I think. So we need to also understand that, why does Pakistan not have a strong, robust democracy? It's because of the problem lies with its creation. The problem lies from the day it was partitioned and created. And I think that sort of understanding has to be put into our sort of approach towards dealing with these countries, with dealing with these people, and then accommodating ourselves accordingly.
I want to move on to your recent work and your graphic novel. It's a rather unusual format. It's the Dissident Club, found in good bookshops everywhere, by yourself and Mr. Hubert Mori. Why did you pick a graphic novel as the medium?
Well, this is an autobiography that I wanted to tell the story of my life. When I arrived here in France in 2018, I was approached by a few publishers who wanted to sort of, who asked me to recount my story, or pen down my story, and my story of exile, because it was well covered in the media at that time. And sort of the escape that I managed to escape the Pakistani state and the kidnapping that I went through. And so I started doing the first sort of writing of the story that I wanted to tell. And once I, had a little bit of pages, a few pages penned down already about what the idea of the book would be like, I showed it to a few friends here in France. And one of my journalist friends, who was also a book writer, went through it and said that, it's something that is really visual, the storytelling that you're trying to tell. It's a very visual story. And have you ever thought of comic books, or doing like a graphic novel? And at that time, I did not have any idea about comic books or graphic novels. But one thing that struck to me, and that sort of like, with this proposal that this friend of mine had made, was that when I was growing up, I did not have access to comic books or graphic novels, because I grew up in a very conservative environment, in a very Islamist environment where, comic books are not allowed because they're like human cartoon shaped people. And those are, supposed to be not, it's not Islamic. And so I thought that, okay, as a child, and this is a story that I recount in the book also. It's one of the stories in the comic book. And so I was like, okay, if did not have access to comic books as a child, uh, and if I do a comic book about my life as a grown up, it could be an act of resistance for me. And so that really attracted me to go towards the format of graphic novels or comic books. Another aspect of it is, of course, the French media, or the French market when it comes to the comic books or the graphic novels. In France, comic books are considered to be a form of art, and it's actually recognized as the ninth form of art by the French state. And so I wanted to contribute to that also. So I think primarily because it would come across as an act of resistance for me. I did my graphic novel. I did my autobiography in a graphic novel format, and also because I think I'm in France where these kind of graphic novels are big. So I thought I might as well contribute to that industry.
And what do different forms of art have to offer as expressions of dissent and resistance? Obviously, uh, the an image of the human form was a an example of resistance for you. But what about other forms like music, graffiti, or even just painting?
I mean, yeah, coming from from a Muslim background, I think we do not have these kind of forms of expression, which are, they're considered worldly forms of expressions. But of course, there's music, there's, painting, there is, I mean, even just the word itself is a form of, resistance in many ways because the society I grew up in, or the environment I grew up in, was an environment where questions were not allowed and questions were looked down upon, and we were told to submit, and we were told to just adhere to authority without questioning. And I think so in such an environment, any form of, dissent, be it like art or music or just the written word, becomes a sort of form of resistance.
On Resistance and on the Dissident Club, it's also a name of a venue that you own in Paris, acts as a hub for exiled voices. How has this space influenced the transnational dissident dialogue, and what stories have surprised you the most?
Well, yeah, I mean, actually, the Dissident Club, which is the graphic novel, is named after my bar, which has already existed, and the graphic novel came out recently, but the bar has existed for the last 5 years. It's actually a cultural space, and the idea is that, in Paris we have these cafés littéraires, which means that there are these bars and cafes where people come together to exchange ideas. And I wanted to create a space where exiled dissidents could come together and, talk about topics that were important to them or to the French society. So we have a lot of debates, we have exhibitions, we have performances, we have book readings, poetry readings, and everything has a link to exiled dissidents like me. And I've come across several exiled dissidents who are from different countries. We have a network of over, I would say, over 100 people who are exiled, who have gone through the bar, besides the other ones who are just Persian or French society. So, and the idea is to build a bridge between these exiled dissidents and the French society at large, and the Persian society in particular, and sort of like showcase what it means to be in exile, what it means to be, continuing your work in exile, and what kind of work do you continue in exile. And I mean, as far as stories are concerned, or other personalities are concerned in exile, other exile dissidents. I mean, there are several people that I've been inspired by throughout my 5 years of running the Dissident Club. I'm particularly usually inspired by most, when I meet women from oppressive regimes like Afghanistan, women from Iran who are in exile because of gender-based violence back in their countries, and those are really powerful, dissidents, because not only are they have left the country, but they also have faced a lot of gender-based violence, which is a lot more dangerous than what males counterparts like us face. And so that's always admirable when I meet women from countries like Afghanistan or Iran or other conservative places in the world.
Has the Dissident Club ever come under threat? It seems like a place which would, while it attracts the wonderful, could also attract the dangerous from regimes of origin.
We've had problems in Paris. I mean, the problems are not in the sense of an attack itself, but I mean, loosely categorize it as an attack, because when a hostile country sends their diplomats or their spies to do surveillance, that is an act of hostility and an attack against the Dissident Club in that sense. In the last 5 years, we've had a few of those incidents, thankfully not a lot. We've had, of course, from the Pakistani embassy here in Paris, we've had some of their Pakistan embassy agents coming here and trying to do surveillance, and thankfully I recognized them, or someone alerted them to me, because I have my sources within the Pakistan embassy, and I was told that this was happening, so I was alert, and when these people came to the bar, to the Dissident Club, I categorically told them that I knew what they were up to and I do not want them there anymore. So I was very, very direct. Then I've had a few incidents of Chinese diplomats also coming to the bar, because we were having events with Chinese dissidents, and so there was a Chinese diplomat, or a spy, I would say, who came to the bar and who wanted to get more information, and who was, started to come very regularly. Eventually, I had to tell them that, I do not want them to see them here. And then they stopped coming, but only after we published a story about it in the local press. And I think that scared them off. Similarly, I've also had, suspicion over Iranian, people, or Iranian people linked to the Iranian regime coming to the bar. I've had this, I had an event, or like we had a series of events actually on Iran, and during that time we saw some suspicious people. We don't know whether or not they were linked to the Iran regime, but they were very suspicious. Yeah, I mean, in fact, like a couple of years ago, the bar was featured in a online magazine called The Intelligence Online, for being a spot for dissidents and spies to come together, and sort of like a clash between dissidents and spies happening at the Dissident Club. So yeah, we do have those problems, but thankfully, I think because we are in France, we are in Paris, and the Dissident Club has a lot of public visibility. I think it protects us from any kind of outright attack or any kind of outright intimidation, because it would bring, it will create a lot of trouble for any kind of this sort of hostile act that might be targeted towards us, because we are in the heart of Paris, which is a city known for its freedoms, known for its free voice and human rights values.
It seems to me that every city in a democracy needs a dissidents club. Um, and it seems like an incredibly valuable space to share knowledge, to share experiences, and to share tips and tricks. What lessons have you learned from dissidents from other regimes or other non-democratic countries there?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that I've really learned, or sort of seen consistently, is that, when I talk to dissidents like me in exile, I see that they have gone through similar sort of oppressive, experiences. They have, the way Russia oppresses its dissidents, or China does it, or Pakistan, or Saudi Arabia, or Iran. There are several countries like that who are oppressing their dissidents and who are authoritative, and usually it's like the same playbook. And this is what I say to people, that if, for example, we see that they are using the same playbook, and sometimes they're even collaborating. China, for example, collaborates with Pakistan a lot on technology, on censorship technology, censoring the internet, censoring the media, and Pakistan learns from China a lot on that. So I say to my fellow dissidents that if they are oppressing us in the same ways, we should fight back together, creating coalitions, creating transnational sort of alliances, where we work together to fight back. And that's why, for example, I have had a transnational repression monitoring group that we have around 25 members of it, from different countries, and we come together every once in a while to discuss what's happening, how we could, we've done joint protests, we've done joint events, we've done joint publications, and the idea is to fight back together, because I think there is strength in numbers for sure, and the larger we are, the more effective we are.
I agree entirely. There is absolutely strength in numbers, and it's something that's key to the conflict between the dictators and the democrats of the world. Um, Briefly on your exile, how has it influenced and affected your journalism?
Um, I think, I mean, when I went into exile, a lot of people told me that, doing journalism in exile would be difficult because you wouldn't have the same sort of, access to Pakistan. But in fact, in my opinion, it has been completely, an opposite experience. Since I've been in exile, I've had more people reaching out to me from Pakistan, telling me that, hey, this is a story we cannot do. Hey, this is an issue we cannot touch. So can you talk about it? Because you're in exile, so you're in safe distance. So I've kind of like moved on to not, what I was doing earlier was reporting, on investigating day to day sort of activities in Pakistan or stories coming out of Pakistan. But now I focus only on underreported, censored, and stories which do not make it to the mainstream. And that way, I think I have because I'm in exile, I have a better chance or I have much more safety at speaking and reporting about these issues. Of course, sometimes access can be an issue, but given that I was reporting in Pakistan for almost 15 years before leaving it, I've had sources across the country, and given the technology that we have today with social media, with private messaging apps, video chats, and everybody has a phone now with internet connections. I think I'm very much connected to people on the ground, and I still have a lot of sources from the ground that are sending me information. And I think one proof of how effective all of this is that I launched a website in Pakistan. I launched a website in Exile about Pakistan, and that was banned in Pakistan by the Pakistan Telecom Authority. Then I regularly get, legal notices from Twitter or X, as it's called, or Facebook about my posts. They don't censor them, but sometimes they limit them in Pakistan, saying that the Pakistani government says that this violates local laws. So this shows that, even in 7 years in exile, my reporting or my whatever the information I share publicly is still affecting Pakistani state, and they're actively trying to censor it even while I'm in exile.
Onto your values. If I say the words democracy and freedom, as somebody who's paid a steep price for dissent, what do those two words mean for you personally, and what images do they conjure in your mind?
I mean, democracy is a very abstract idea. I do not know how I would try to sort of visualize it, but I mean, democracy and freedom, they go hand in hand. Democracy and human rights values, universal human rights values, they go in hand. These are concepts which are very, strong and robust concepts that we need to hold on to. And I think all of these concepts or these values have one thing in common, which is freedom. And I think for me that is very important. Personally speaking, to be free, we are born free. We are supposed to be free, and we should have those freedoms all our lives. Sadly, that's not the case nowadays. But I think, yeah, I hold freedom very dearly. I'm not sure how I would be able to visualize it. I mean, maybe one way of visualizing freedom is the way I live my life today. It's an exile. It's far away from my country of origin, but yet I have all the freedoms that I wanted to have, and I do not I do not have to, look over my shoulder all the time, thinking that someone's going to get me. I mean, of course, there are some safety concerns, but a lot more freedom that I have here. So my life in exile symbolizes freedom, or is a visual representation of freedom for me.
And what's the most important lesson that you can tell my audience about protecting freedom?
Well, do not take it for granted, even if you're born in a society which is already free, which sort of, to some relative extent, the Western society or Europe or, the United States or UK is. Do not take this freedom for granted. Continue to protect it, continue to fight for it, and be very vigilant, be very, careful to not let rulers or power or politics manipulate you into giving up your freedoms.
And this is a very young podcast, but I was looking at the metrics the other day, and I was surprised to see that I apparently have a number of listeners from unfree countries. Assuming for a moment that they are not intelligence services or VPNs, and they are perhaps a dissident of some sort, do you have any message or advice for them?
Well, I think, I mean, the situation is quite dire in many of these countries which are not free, and people, are some of them are sometimes hopeless. But I think we should not lose hope, and we should know that there are always ways to fight back. We just need to find the right way to fight back. But what is important is that we need to fight back.
And my final question, do you have a message for the dictators, the oligarchs, the authoritarians of the world?
Yes, I mean, I think they should realize, and the message that I would give to them is that, this dictatorship, this oppression, and has never lasted forever, and we've seen that in the past, in Pakistan also, including and globally, these dictators. They do not live forever. They do not last forever, and these regimes do not go on forever. So, one day things are going to come to an end, and it's not going to be a good end for them.
Mrs. Siddiqui, thank you very much for your time. Where can people get your book?
It's available online. You can buy it online. If you search for the Dissident Club English version, you will see a few links. The publisher itself has a link. The publisher is called the Arsenal Pulp. It's a Canadian-based publishing company. They have a link that they deliver with, and I think they've also listed it on global websites like Amazon, etc., or Google itself. Then there's also the French version. So when you're ordering, be careful that you don't order the French version. In fact, there are right now 4 different languages that the Dissident Club is available in, including English, French, Portuguese, and Polish. And very soon we might have also, we are going to have a German version of the book.
Excellent. I'll have to add it to my collection. So thank you very much indeed. That's it for this episode of Why We Fight. What struck you most about their story? What did you agree or disagree with? Drop a comment and let us know. And if this conversation meant something to you, don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who cares about democracy as much as you do. To get early access and support independent journalism, join us on Patreon or Substack. Links are in the description. And if you want to connect with a global community of people who care about freedom and human rights, come hang out with us on Discord. Until next time, remember, democracy is non-negotiable.